Hello board game brothers and sisters, I'm Adam Singer and welcome to another episode where I'll be letting you know of all the board games launching on Kickstarter and Gamefound over the next week. If you're new here, we do this every single week, so if you want to stay up to date, this is definitely the place to be. Feel free to subscribe down below because there is definitely a lot more to come. Before we get started, I do normally like to go over some news and announcements that I just found out about over the past week, but I don't have too much to go over, but I did want to take some time just to go over some of the campaigns that I was expecting to launch this month, but I haven't got any confirmed launch dates for these yet, so it is possible that they might still launch before the end of the month in the next few days here, and if that's the case, I just wanted to let you know that that is a possibility, and if that doesn't happen and I do get a confirmed launch date sometime in the future, I will cover them in more detail during that respective week. First one here, of course, is the new edition of the game Inish, which is a very popular area control game, and this is going to be offering you a big box with the core game as well as all the expansions released so far, and I'm sure there will be some tweaks to the rules, and there will also be some brand new upgraded components. And before you get your hopes up like I did, no, I don't think that's supposed to be David Bowie on the box. I was also expecting American Mogul to launch this month, which is the follow-up to the game Global Mogul. And then we have the one with my favorite theme of the bunch, which is Night Soil, and I'll just leave you to wonder what exactly that means. But in this one, players are going to be worrying about sanitation in London, England. Soros, which looks like a dinosaur-themed tile placement game. Then there was Meerkat Kingdoms, which is an area control game that I did cover in the past, so if this one does happen to launch, I do already have footage for this one that you can go ahead and check out. But other than all of these, we still do have quite a bit launching before the end of this month because this is a jam-packed week. I'm actually going to be filming this one over 2 days because I don't think I can get through all the games in a single sitting without going crazy. I guess, well, more crazy. But before we get into all of those fantastic games, I do want to give a quick mention to Alex over at Boardgame Co. because him and I do work together keeping track of all these games so that I can put these videos together for you each and every week. But then Alex puts out a whole bunch of other videos, but he also puts out a video at the start of each month going over the month and letting you know of the heavy hitters that are to come. I especially wanted to mention this now because we are getting near the end of this month, which means that Alex is going to have his video up for May really soon here. And I know the tariffs have been a pretty hot topic, and I know that there are some companies that have postponed their campaigns until there is a little bit more stability there. But overall, I haven't seen a decline in the amount of campaigns launching so far. It might happen in the next few weeks, it might not. These tariffs will affect some games more than others, so it probably will be more of a case-by-case basis than anything else. And a lot of companies have been putting out statements over the past few weeks explaining how they're going to be handling the tariffs, if there's going to be any additional costs to consumers, or if they're going to be covering them themselves. And even though the tariffs on imports from China will probably remain over 100%, I've seen some publishers put out statements saying that this is only going to be increasing the actual cost of their game by about 5 to 10%. Like I said, it is case by case, and this is a very nuanced and complicated situation. It's definitely not a topic that I can just cover in a few seconds or minutes in the intro here, but what I want to say is that I do think there is hope here still. I don't think it's an existential crisis for board games, although there will definitely be some challenges. Once again, very nuanced and complicated, and I think the worst thing about this is just how sudden it was more than anything else. I would like to go into more details on this in a separate video, and I have been putting together some notes around all of this. I've just been really struggling to find any extra time outside of these videos. I will try to find some more time to put that together, but with how things have been flip-flopping all over the place, it's possible that the tariffs are no longer a thing by the time I find the time. And I don't know why I'm getting into all of this right now, but my main point is check out Alex over at Boardgame Co. because he does have a lot of content, and if you are interested to hear some different opinions on the tariffs and how they're affecting the industry, Alex does already have a few videos out on that already. But there is an area that both Alex and I do not cover in near as much detail, and this is the historical war games. We normally do give these a quick mention when we come across them, but there are whole other crowdfunding platforms that focus on these, and it's a whole other subgenre that does deserve its own attention, and Zilla Blitz does focus on this area exclusively. So if these are a type of game that you might be interested in, or if you just want the most comprehensive board game coverage of everything that's launching, you'll definitely want to check out his channel in addition to the content that Alex and I can offer you. So if you do find his content helpful, definitely feel free to subscribe, and if I haven't said it already, I do have the links to both Alex's and Zaibats's channel in the description down below. But that's everything I got for an intro, and like I said, we do have quite a few games to cover, so let's get it on. And the first campaign we have launches on April 29th, and this one is called Nippon Zaibatsu, and this one's a competitive economic strategy game that does take place in Japan, where players are trying to build and progress giant conglomerates of interconnected companies. And this is also a new edition of a previously released game, but it does look quite a bit different than it because this features all new artwork and upgraded components, and there will also be an improved storage solution. The overall gameplay does remain mostly the same, but there have been some changes and improvements there as well, and this version does also include a solo mode. But if you're not familiar with the original game, this is a game where players are going to be drafting workers and then placing them onto their board in order to perform various actions. The main board features 9 different action locations, and adjacent to each of these is a space for various workers, and these are going to be randomly assigned to those spaces at the beginning of each round. This game works kind of like a reverse worker placement because instead of placing your workers out here to take those actions, you're actually going to be drafting a worker of your choice and then choosing one of the 2 actions associated with the space where you drafted that worker from. Every time you draft a worker, you're going to be placing it on one of the spaces in the column here, which means that there is a limited amount of workers you can draft before you run out of space, and that's the reason that one of your options on your turn instead of drafting a worker is to clear all the workers off your board. Every time you do this, you do have to pay an amount of coins multiplied by the number of different colored workers you've drafted, so it is normally more efficient to try and draft workers of the same color. The one caveat with this is that when you do clear your board of your workers, the colored worker at the bottom and top of this column are going to dictate the rewards that you get for performing that action. But if you're not clearing off your board yet, like I said, you're going to be drafting one of those workers and performing one of the 2 associated actions, and these different actions can allow you to do all sorts of things like build new factories out on your personal player board, which you can see at the bottom here, and they're all going to be producing different types of resources. You can also invest in research and development in order to upgrade these factories in a variety of ways, but of course the whole reason that you are doing all of this is so that you can supply different markets with your goods in order to gain influence there, and also use your goods to complete different types of objectives, which will earn you victory points for the end of the game. And of course, there are actions that allow you to do that, and players will be keeping track of their influence around the different markets using these tokens here, and there are also actions that you can use to help drive opponents out, and also actions to help you build up your railroads and trains, which can bolster your position on these different markets. Players can also build ships out on the board in order to get additional bonuses anytime that they perform that reset action that I explained to you earlier. And the players continue like this throughout the round, drafting those different workers and taking one of the associated actions, or instead choosing to take one of those reset actions on their turn instead, until all the workers have been drafted. And that's going to be triggering the end of the round, but every couple rounds there will be some scoring that takes place. Players are going to be scoring points based on their completed contracts, any upgrades that they were able to make on their own personal player boards, as well as the current control that they have on the various markets. The game continues like this until this token reaches the end of the round tracker, and that's going to be triggering final scoring, which does include a few other areas for victory points as well. And of course, it's the player with the most victory points after all of those points have been tallied that wins the game. And if this one does sound interesting to you, you can go ahead and check it out, and I will have it linked in the description down below. And also launching on the 29th, we have Flamecraft Duals, and this one is a 2-player abstract strategy tile placement game that does take place in the Flamecraft world. This one is also our Discord pick of the week, which is no surprise considering how well the previous game was received, and it is a game that I have played and I do enjoy it quite a bit. This one does play quite a bit different than that previous game, but it is from the same designer, so if you do like his work, you might like this one as well. And of course, like I said, it does take place in the same universe, so it does maintain that same level of cuteness. But the way that this game works is that each player is going to be taking turns drawing a token from a bag and then placing that token somewhere out on the shared board. Each of these tokens is going to feature a different dragon that can have up to 2 icons, which represents the skills that that dragon has in its arsenal. Each of these skills will grant you access to the associated special ability that you'll have the option to choose from when you do place that token, with each of these abilities allowing you to break the rules or manipulate the board in a variety of ways. The actual goal in this game is to try and earn more victory points than your opponent before the end of the game, and the way that you earn victory points is by completing these various mission cards. There's always going to be 2 available to complete, and if you're really clever, you could also complete both of them in a single turn, and they always do get replenished at the start of your turn, but each of them will have a pattern on them that you'll be trying to complete by connecting the various dragon tokens together on the board, and if you're able to do that within your turn, then you'll be able to claim that card. I don't have a whole lot more info on this one, but I think that gives you a good idea of how the game plays. Hopefully I got most of the rules right there. I am filming this before the campaign is actually launched, so if you do want to see if there's anything else added, or if you want further details on the rules, I'm sure they will have more info on the campaign once it does launch, and I will have that linked down below, and of course you can click to get notified once this one launches. Also on the 29th, we have Zeo Genesis, and this one is a competitive skirmish game, and this is also a genre that I don't dive into in too much detail. But in this one, players are going to have giant exosuits, and players are going to be taking turns activating one of their units at a time. But anytime that you activate a unit, you do get multiple actions with that unit in order to potentially move multiple times and even perform an attack. Once again, this isn't a genre of game that I dive into too much detail, but if this is of interest to you, I will have it linked down below, and you can go ahead and check it out and follow along if you do want to get notified once it launches, and that will also get you a free miniature added to your pledge. Also on the 29th, we have Super Pixel Tactics, which was a game that I thought was launching last week, but it got pushed back until this week instead. So I did already offer footage on this one, and it is one that I'm really interested in. I think it looks like a lot of fun. If you missed out on last week's episode, you'll definitely want to check this one out, and I'll go ahead and roll that previous footage for you now. And this one's a 2-player card combat game where players are going to be fighting against each other using all sorts of different characters that might look familiar to you from different video games. This is a new version of a game that was released years ago, and there's been multiple expansions and new mechanisms introduced, but this new version is going to be consolidating all of that into a single package with a better storage solution, upgraded art and components, and a bunch of new heroes added to the game. And this one is also my own personal pick of the week, because the more I looked into this one, the more I was interested in adding this one to my collection, and all the different reviews and opinions I saw on this one were overwhelmingly positive, so I think this is a game that has stood the test of time, has a really fun theme, and the gameplay to back it up, and I think this is a game that's really easy to teach and play, but it's also introducing some unique and interesting mechanisms that I think are going to give you a lot of depth of decision here. But this is a game where players are going to be starting with a deck of different hero cards, but you're always going to be drawing 5 at the beginning of the game, and then each of these cards are double-sided, meaning that you can flip them over to turn them into a leader, and every single card can be a leader. But from those first 5 cards that you draw, you're going to be choosing one of those as your leader, putting them in the center of your tableau. The leader normally does have some more impressive stats and also an ability that will affect your gameplay overall, and you are also trying to be the first to defeat your opponent's leader in order to win the game. The catch here is that you and your opponent are also going to have a ton of other hero cards that you're going to be using in a variety of ways, synergizing them with each other as well as your leader in order to try and defeat your opponent. You might have also noticed that each of these hero cards have 4 different actions that you could possibly use, and this is the thing that makes this game a lot different than almost any other game out there, because although multi-use cards is not a new thing, the thing that makes this one unique is the action that you get access to depends on how you play that card. As I briefly implied, each player is going to be building up their own tableau, and you're going to have these sheets to help you keep track of which cards you have where, but the cards that you place in the front row here, colored in red, are going to be unlocking that hero's red action, which is at the top of their card. If you assign them to the green row in the middle, then of course it's going to be unlocking that green action, and the same with the blue row in the back. If you assign them there, then you're going to be gaining access to their blue action. But there is also this purple action here as well, and that action comes into play if you choose to just play that card directly from your hand in order to perform that purple ability. This means that not only do you have a ton of different options and implications depending on if and where you want to play that card into your tableau, but you can also just choose not to ever play that card into your tableau and use it for its ability by just spending it directly from your hand. This creates a nearly endless amount of possibilities and permutations anytime that you play this game, which I'm sure will offer a ton of opportunities for being really clever with the way that you play these cards, and coming up with really fun and unique ways of chaining different cards together and taking advantage of the abilities that work best for you in that moment. But like I said, at the beginning of the game, you're going to be choosing one of your hero cards to lock in as as your leader, and then the game just plays over a series of rounds, alternating starting player, with players just taking turns performing 2 actions on their turn. Every round you're going to have 3 turns, which means that you have 6 actions total, but the first 2 actions you take are going to be relative to the first row, and the second 2 actions you take are going to be relative to that second row, then your last 2 actions are going to be relative to that third row. The actions that you're able to take could be to add a card to the respective row or to attack with a card in that row, and if it's ranged, it can hit any location on your opponent's tableau. Otherwise, it's going to be only able to hit the frontmost characters. You can also use an action to rearrange the cards in your tableau, draw a new card into your hand, or play a card directly from your hand for its special ability. One other thing to note is that if any of your cards are defeated, they actually remain in your tableau, and you have to perform an action in order to remove that corpse from your tableau and make room for a new card. The game continues like this until one of the players is able to defeat their opponent's leader card, and the first player to do that wins the game. And if this one sounds interesting to you, you can go ahead and check it out, and I will have it linked down below. And of course, you can follow along to get notified once this one launches. And also launching on the 29th, we have STEERY, a storytelling party card game. And the way that this game works is at the start of each round, you're going to be drawing a character card, and then players are going to be taking turns using cards from their hand, so that all have different prompts on them. And you're going to be using those prompts to tell a story, incorporating that character and incorporating the arc of the story that has been told so far. This one is also a game that I have covered in the past, so rather than going through it all again, I'll just go ahead and roll that previous footage for you now. And the way that this game works is that at the start of each game, players are going to be dealt a hand of 5 story cards, and these are going to have different prompts or situations on them, and players are going to be using these to try and create a story. But the way that all of this unfolds is at the start of the game, there's going to be a character card that gets drawn, and then whichever player is going first can use any amount of those story cards from their hand to integrate with that character in order to tell their story. Each of the cards from your hand that you're able to integrate into that story are also going to have points associated with them, and for every card that you're able to use, you're going to be keeping that card for its victory points at the end of the game. At the end of your turn, you're always going to be replacing any story cards that you played with new ones from the deck, so that you're always maintaining a hand of 5 cards. Rounds continue like this, with the next player adding to your story, playing any cards from their hand, so on and so forth, until someone draws the end story card from the deck, and then it's going to be the next player's turn to end the story. The catch with this game is that throughout the story, you can actually draw additional character cards from the deck when you're going to draw more cards into your hand, and every time that happens, new characters are going to be added into the plot. Every time a player is telling a part of the story, they always do have to include every character, which means that it gets more and more difficult the more characters that get added. The other players can also object to your addition to the story during your turn if they feel like it just wasn't good enough, and there are certain rules around this. For example, if it just didn't move the story forward well enough, or if the cards you're trying to integrate just didn't have a very significant part in the story that you're trying to tell, or if the plot points that you added just didn't have that cohesion and continuity with the story so far, and you're just trying to force things in, other players might try to call you out on that as well. If enough of the players agree, then you're going to have to take all the cards that you played back into your hand, effectively losing a turn. Alternatively, if you don't think you have a good enough story, you can also pass, and if you choose to pass, then you can discard as many cards in your hand in order to swap them with new ones from the deck. But like I said, the game continues like this until someone draws that end card, and then they're going to be wrapping up the story, and then the player with the most victory points wins the game, but you can go ahead and play another story immediately after. And if you do want to check this one out, you can go ahead and find it in the description down below, and of course, follow along if you do want to get notified when this one launches. And also launching on the 29th, we have Final Titan, and this one's a really special one because this is coming from the same team and designers that brought you the game Mindbug, which also happens to be one of my favorite, if not my favorite head-to-head card battler. I think this offers a ton of punch in a small package, and it's the most refined card battler that I've ever played. But what I love about Final Titan is that this is offering a completely different experience, but I also might like it just as much as Mindbug. They've definitely done it again here, and for that reason, this is my own personal pick of the week. And this is one that I can say with confidence because they were kind enough to send me a prototype copy of the game, and I have played the game multiple times already, and I will be playing it a lot more because this is a game that has a ton of replayability because there's just so many different characters and combinations that you can try, and it's a game that's super easy to teach and play, and anytime that you play this, I guarantee you will want a rematch, and you'll be playing this multiple times throughout the night. What's also really interesting about this game is that on its surface, it has some mechanisms that normally I am not super fond of, like player elimination, as well as randomness through rolling a die to determine your success or failure. But the game plays quick enough that if you are eliminated, it's not that far from the end of the game. And also the game plays in such a way that you will be rooting for one of the other players because you'll want them to enact your revenge. And although it might seem like you're just rolling a die to determine your attack, and that might be true, but there's just so much more nuance and decision going on with everything else involved in the battle. You're going to feel like more of a manager of a team, creating your lineup of fighters and sending them out at the right time depending on their opponent and which of your fighters you think will best nullify your opponent's strengths or exploit their weaknesses. Players can also get different tokens and cards that can grant them with some special effects or abilities, and this is all going to come into play with your decision making and how that combines with your characters and how your various characters combo together. But like I said, the publisher was kind enough to send me a prototype copy of the game, so I think the best way to show this game off is to just show you how the game actually plays. And the reason this game is called Final Titan is because this is a King of the Hill style game where there's always going to be one character in the game acting as the current Titan. Once a player's character becomes the Titan, it normally stays there until it is defeated by another character, and then that character would be taking its place. As I mentioned, there are a ton of different characters offered in this game, and they all have different abilities and effects, and pretty much every rule in this game can be broken in one way or another. But before we get too far into the gameplay here, I just want to mention that I currently have this set up for 3 different players, and you normally would each have 4 different characters in your roster, but because of my limited player space here, I'm just going to show off 3 because I think that is more than enough to show you how this game plays. And I just randomly dealt these characters out, which is a way that you can play the game, but you can also do an open drafting as well. Drafting the characters does make it more competitive, but I personally prefer just the random draw because it is quicker to set up, and because this game does introduce the randomness of the dice roll. It's always fun to hope for the upset and see the underdog win. That being said, I haven't played a game yet where I felt like one player was way more overpowered than the rest. There's definitely individual cards that seem really overpowered when they first make their way into the combat area, but what you'll soon find out is that a lot of these characters seem overpowered in their own individual ways, and that is just one of the things I love about this game. These are my 3 characters here, and each of them do have some different stats and effects. Characters can have different abilities that get triggered at different points in the game. For example, this one grants me with a dodge token at the start of each fight. Each of the characters can also have an ultimate, which can trigger some powerful instant effects, or even an ultimate form, which can also trigger instant effects, but this one persists, usually giving you some sort of special ability as long as you are in that form. The different values down here represent the amount of damage you do depending on the value you roll on the die. Each of these could also have an icon associated with it, which can allow you to do things like steal health from your opponent or grant you with an additional action. Some of the other characters can actually feature a bench power, which is in effect as long as they are not the current one in battle and as long as they're still alive. And these can cause all sorts of different effects, which could affect all players or maybe just affect your character that's currently in battle, or it might just grant you with some sort of bonus as long as you keep that character on your bench. In addition to your characters, each player is also dealt 3 different upgrade cards at the beginning of the game, and they can grant you with all sorts of different effects. And players will be simultaneously revealing these at the start of each battle, and if you are able to survive battles, or if you have the right abilities, you can get more of these into your possession. And I think we're good to get into some fights now. And the way that this game starts is that each of the players are going to be looking at each of their character's speed, and whichever player has the character with the highest speed is going to be the player that goes first. Both myself and my player on the left here have a character with the speed of 10, which is the highest value. So in that case, we would be tied. So we would just look at our next fastest character, and theirs is a 9 and mine is an 8, which means that they would start as the Titan. They can choose whichever character they want to start out as the Titan, and this is a big part of the strategy in the game. They don't have to use the one that is the quickest. But before we do jump into the first battle, there's a couple things we have to do. First of all, whichever player begins the game as the starting player does get an additional upgrade card, and also all the players will want to look at the abilities of their characters and see if they have any start of game effects. This character does, and their ability grants their player with 2 dodge tokens, which are really nice because you can spend them anytime that one of your characters is going to take damage to instead take no damage. But I think the character they're going to put into play first is going to be the Gunslinger, and the reason for that is because they have a really nice ability of Quick Draw, which allows them to deal 3 damage at the start of a fight, and they do have quite a bit of health. And this player does also have this bench power, which deals 2 damage anytime that a charge is rolled, which is a special icon on the die. And also, since that player has those 2 dodge tokens, they think that they can keep this character in through multiple fights, allowing them to take advantage of their quick draw multiple times. Since this player is going first, we go clockwise to see who their opponent is, and it would be this player here, but they're looking at the whole situation over here and feeling very intimidated because this player has a lot going on. And you do have the option to be a coward in this game and pass the battle on to the next player, hopefully, which this player would really like to do. The only way you can do this is if you have some of these upgrade cards in your possession, which we all do have at the beginning of the game, but you're going to be picking one of those, probably the one that you feel is the least useful to you, and then you're going to be putting that into a pool in the center. Let's say they chose to do that, so they get to keep their other 2 for now, but they are giving this one up in order to pass the battle on to me. But I have some of these as well, and if I also really don't want to jump into this battle right now, or if I have a card here that I don't think is particularly useful to me, I could add that card to this pool to pass the battle on to the next player, which would just go back to this player over here. The catch here is that the more cards that get added into this pool, the more valuable that pool becomes, and whichever player does decide to take on the battle gets to claim these cards. This means that you sometimes might do this just to pass it on to the other player in the hopes that they also pass back to you, so that you net yourself an additional card. But I ain't no coward and I'm ready for a fight, so I'll take this card and I'm going to choose one of my characters to go up against this Titan. If they roll a fist, they're going to be doing 4 points of damage, so that's pretty scary. If they roll the claw, then they're going to be doing 2 points of damage and also getting an additional roll, so that's also scary. And because of the bench power over here, if they happen to roll the charge icon, that also is going to do 2 damage to me. I haven't explained the way that the charge works, but this is essentially the way that you activate your ultimate or your ultimate form. And the first time that you roll your charge, you're going to be flipping your charge token over to its other side. And if you roll the charge a second time when this is already flipped up, then that's going to be instantly activating the effect of your ultimate. Or if you have an ultimate form, instead it's going to be granting you this ultimate form token, which indicates that you are now in your ultimate form. Whenever there's a battle, there's always going to be one Titan and there's always going to be one challenger. Unfortunately for me, I don't have any bench powers that I can take advantage of, but this character does counter the claws, so that's pretty nice. And they do also gain a dodge token at the start of the battle. And they do have a couple nice bonuses down here where if I roll the karate chop, I also get to roll the die again. And if I roll the fist, I also get to perform the siphon action, which heals me equal to the amount of damage I've done. Their ultimate is pretty sweet as well because it's going to deal 4 fists, which could actually deal up to 8 damage and then heal me that amount as well. But because we know that they have some dodge tokens, they're probably going to dodge that, so I don't know if I will be able to land that, but I think we're going to try our luck with this character and see how we do. And the first thing that the players do when they start a fight is choose their upgrade cards, and because my speed is higher than my opponent's, I get to choose mine first, but these are going to be going face down, but I am going to be using 3 of them. And then they're going to be choosing their upgrade cards. And they're going to be playing these two cards, but we can just go ahead and reveal everything now. And I played the Shadow Step, which will get me a dodge token. I played the Gorgon's Gaze, which prevents my opponent from ever re-rolling the die more than once on their turn. And the reason I did that is because they do have this special ability when they roll the Claw that allows them to roll the die again, so this would prevent that from happening. And finally, I have the Inner Focus, which allows me to set my first roll as a charge, which will get me one step closer to my ultimate. My opponent played the Hex, which allows them to discard one of my upgrade cards, which isn't great for me. And then they also played the Bag of Tricks, which allows them to return one of their other upgrade cards back to their hand, because normally these would get discarded. So I think they don't want me to get a dodge token, so they're going to be sending that one to the discard pile. And then because they have the Bag of Tricks, they get to get that Hex back to their hand, but the Bag of Tricks does also get discarded. For the other two, I like to just slide them under the character card so we remember that we have those effects for this battle. And because I do have the higher speed, I do get to attack first, but before we do that, we need to resolve any start of fight effects. And my character does have one, which allows me to gain a dodge token, so that's pretty nice. And my opponent has their quick draw as well, which is going to allow them to inflict 3 damage immediately. And that's not great for me because I only have 5 health, but we do have the dodge token if things get hairy. And because I played the card that allows me to set my first roll as a charge, I am going to do that. So let's throw this with the charge side up. And the nice thing about that is anytime you flip this up to its charge side, that also does grant you with an additional roll. So let's see what we can do here. And we've activated our ultimate immediately here, which would normally do a ton of damage, but of course our opponent does have these dodge tokens and they are not going to allow that to happen, so they are going to dodge. And now this flips back to its other side, and our opponent is going to be rolling their die. And they have rolled the Devil Horns, and I can't take that damage, so I'm also going to be using my dodge token. Now it comes back to us. Let's see what we can respond with. Another charge, so we get to roll again. Let's see if we can actually do some damage here. Karate Chop for 1 damage, and it's not terrible because that also does grant us another roll. And we have gotten the Karate Chop again, so we're going to be dealing another damage, and that grants us with another roll. And I will take it. Let's roll this again. And yes, there is a side that rolls blank, but we did do 3 damage, so that's not terrible. And let's see what our opponent responds with. And they got the Claw, which is actually really good for us. So it does 2 damage, but we actually have a small detail here on our character that says that we counter the Claw. And because we counter it means that it's going to be doing no damage to us instead. And even though this has a tiny little die here that says they get to re-roll when they roll the Claw, because we played this card that says they can only roll the die once on their turn, they do not get to roll that again. So this means that we are still alive here. And we have rolled the Fist, and it's only 2 damage, and our opponent has 7 health left, so it's not a huge threat to them, but they know if they allow me to do that damage, then I'm going to be healing too, because this does have the life drain associated with it. So for that reason, they will use their last dodge token to avoid that attack. So this is going to be going back to our opponent, and let's see what they do. And this is actually good for us because this does grant them a charge. And like I said, when you flip this over to its charge side, that does grant you with another roll. But it's the same thing here as the last turn. Because we played this card that only allows our opponent to roll once on their turn no matter what, they do not get that additional roll. But I think we're still dead here because they do have that benched character with the bench power that allows them to do 2 damage anytime that they roll a charge. This character gets discarded, but everything else pretty much remains the same. This character keeps any of their tokens, and their current health does persist into the next battle. But the one catch here is that their charge does get reset, so they will be losing that. And they will be going into the next battle because they have successfully defended their place as the Titan. And the next player to fight would be the player to the left of me, but because that's currently the Titan, you just skip over to the next player, which brings us back to the third player over here. And now they get to decide once again if they want to enter the battle and fight this Titan now that I've damaged him and got rid of all of his dodge tokens. Or they could choose to be a coward once again because they still do have 2 of these upgrade cards that they could use to pass the battle on to me. But I think they will fight this time because they have this character that has 10 health and also can deal a nice amount of damage. And also they have a special ability here that allows them to play 2 cards from the top of the upgrade card deck instead of using theirs, which is nice because it's just going to essentially grant them with 2 free cards. This character still does have the higher speed, so they would play their cards first. But you do also have the option not to play any cards, and I think they will save those for a future battle. But for the War Golem here, they just draw 2 from the top of the deck. You don't have a choice, so they are going to do that, and we can just go ahead and reveal those. And these cards actually aren't too bad for them because this one's going to gain them +5 speed, which will allow them to be the first attacker in this battle, which wouldn't have been the case otherwise since they do have the lower speed. And also they have this sharpshooter card, which allows them to re-roll the die anytime that they do roll a miss, because yes, there is a blank side on these dice. Let's just slide them under here so we remember that we have those effects. And they're going to be rolling the first die, so let's see how they do. Not bad, they get a charge and they get to re-roll. And we instantly got our ultimate, which actually doesn't help us too much with this current battle, but it will help us in a future battle because it allows us to give an action token to one of our fellow characters out on the bench. And the Mind Bug here is pretty sweet because it can allow you to steal opponents' characters if you do activate their ultimate. So I think an extra action on the Mind Bug could be pretty powerful, so we will go ahead and do that. That's going to be resetting our charge, and it's going to be the other player's turn. And one thing I want to do before I forget is that they do have the start of fight effect to deal 3 damage. So let's make sure we add a token for that, but now it's going to be their turn to roll the die. And they have rolled the Karate Chop, which only does 1 damage, and now it is back to us. Lots of Karate Chops this game, and that's also only going to do 1 damage. 3 more damage on the War Golem, and now we get to roll again, and I rolled a blank, but lucky for us, when we roll a miss, we get to re-roll the die. And that's nice for us because we do 4 damage, and they don't have any dodge tokens left, so they are getting pretty close to death here. But now it's their turn, and they have rolled the Claw, which does 2 damage, and also allows them to roll again. And they have rolled the Karate Chop, which is 1 damage on us. And I think we can wipe them out here with another fist. And when you defeat the Titan, you just flip your token over because you have now become the new Titan. They get eliminated and permanently removed from the game. The surviving player does lose their upgrade cards. One thing I forgot to mention on the last battle is that the winning player does also gain an additional upgrade card. And I think we'll do one more battle here since it does come back to me, and I think I will throw the Hydra into the mix here. So my Hydra is able to counter fists, which is really nice because their fist is really powerful. And when I do counter it, I do get to gain an action token, which is really nice because I can spend those to perform additional rolls on my turn. I have 10 health, but only 3 speed, but I think we're going to be okay here because they only have 2 health left, so we are definitely going to wipe them out. But at the beginning of our battles, we do need to play our upgrade cards. And for the War Golem, it's the same as last time. They're not actually allowed to play the upgrade cards from their hand. They just have to draw randomly from the top of the deck, which is nice because it still does get them free cards, even if they don't get to pick what they are. And my last card isn't very good for me right now, so I'm just going to hang on to that. So let's reveal what our opponent has. And they got Sharpshooter again, which allows them to re-roll the die if they miss. And an Armor, which is going to reduce the damage by 1 for every attack I'm able to inflict on them. But they are the faster one here, so they get to go first. So let's see how they do. And they have activated their charge, and they get to re-roll. And a Karate Chop, so nothing too crazy. And let's see what we got. And a Fist, which is going to do 4 damage minus the 1 for the Armor, which is going to be 3, which is still enough to wipe them off this world. So this character is eliminated, and we can send them back to the graveyard. My character becomes the new Titan, and then the next player becomes the Challenger. But I think that's enough to show you how the game plays. The rounds just continue like this, with someone challenging the Titan, and then players using their upgrade cards to prepare for the battle. And whenever you're a challenger, you're always going to want to send in the character that you think can exploit your opponent's weaknesses the best. There are some other tokens that you didn't get to see through this little playthrough here, and that's the poison token, which is going to inflict 1 damage every time it is that player's turn. Then there's the power token, which is going to add an additional damage to each of your attacks. Just playing against myself here is only a small taste of what this game has to offer, because I think so much more is introduced when you do have the different dynamics of other players at the table. Even when it's not your turn, you're always going to be rooting for one player or another, whether it's because the other player humiliated you in a previous battle, or because you know one of those characters currently in the battle is particularly strong against your set of characters and you'd really like to see them wiped out. There's a lot more to the decision making once you have 4 different fighters to choose from, whereas I was just showing you 3 here. And those decisions of when to use your action tokens or your upgrade cards, or maybe just pushing your luck with what you have, can all be very pivotal and game changing if you have a decent strategy and a little bit of luck on your side. And if you survive long enough to be the last player standing, then that means you have won the game, and I definitely recommend checking this one out and giving it a play if you do have the opportunity. I've had a lot of fun with this one, and I'm hoping to play it again this weekend. Check it out if you're interested, and I will have a link in the description down below. And also launching on April 29th, we have In the Blink of a Dragon's Eye. And this one is a solo game that's going to be offering you a short story that plays over 5 different chapters, but each one of these chapters is also going to have its own minigame associated with it that's going to be taking you through the different events that happen during that chapter, and each of them provided on a single sheet that only requires 2 dice and a dry erase marker in order to play. But the story here is going to be introducing players into a perilous world called the World of Blight. And in this world, there is a human who forms an unlikely brotherhood with one of the few remaining non-feral dragons. Of course, the overarching story here is to be discovered as you read through the chapters, but each of the minigames are going to feature a certain amount of actions that you're going to be using through an exploration phase, and you're going to be using that to move around a grid and collect different items and resources, and then you're going to be using those items and resources to help you in battle, because the second phase is the combat phase, where you're going to be using those dice to fight in combination with the different items that you were able to acquire. Each of the minigames also can feature different outcomes depending on how you perform and the options that you choose, and each of them can also offer additional challenges that you can try to complete in order to gain additional bonuses. If this one sounds interesting to you, definitely check it out. I will have it linked down below, and of course you can click to get notified once this one launches. And also launching on April 29th, we have Muster Raise the Banners, and this one's a head-to-head dueling card game where players are fighting for control over 5 different lanes. The way that this game works is that you do have a main deck of faction cards, and these are going to be varying in color and strength, and players are just going to be dealt 5 of these at the beginning of the game. Each turn you can only take 1 action, but your options are to play a card to a lane matching the color of that card, and also its strength value must be greater than or equal to the card that was previously played there, if there is a card that was previously played there. But the big catch with this game are the rainbow cards, which are essentially wild cards that can be played to any colored lane, and they come in a few different forms. There is the wizard card, which is always worth 5 strength. You can play it for that strength, or instead you can spin it around and use it as a rainbow bridge. And this is going to allow you to connect any 2 cards together, ignoring the faction color. These cards are really nice because they allow you to break the placement rules, so if you don't have a card that you can place into that stack and it's a stack that you really want to take control of, you can use these cards to get around that. The risk with these cards is that they can be taken back into your hand through a swap action if you do have another card that would fit where that card currently is and still be a valid placement. For example, with this wizard card at the bottom of this yellow stack here, it's currently worth 5, but if you place that there and then your opponent has a yellow 4, on their turn they could actually swap it with that wizard to take that wizard into their possession and then use it on one of their stacks. Another cool aspect of this game is that you have this middle lane here where you can discard cards into if you don't have a valid placement for them, and you can also draw a card from the center lane instead of drawing it from the shared deck. But there's another card that lives in the center here, which is the Rainbow Castle, and whichever lane that castle is currently in, it's going to allow you to play any color cards into that lane, so long as they still follow the placement rules of being higher or equal strength than the card played there previously. But the game continues like this, with players either placing a card and drawing a new one, or swapping one of their cards with one of the rainbow cards currently in play. And like I said, once the draw pile runs out, it's the player who controls the most lanes that wins the game. And if you do want to check this one out, I will have it linked down below, and you can follow along if you want to get notified once it launches. And also launching on the 29th, we have Nataterra, and this one's an asymmetric territory control game set in a fantasy world, and players are going to be playing as different factions with upgradable units categorized as ranged, melee, or workers, and factions will also each have their own specific buildings with different effects and different technology cards that you can gain periodically throughout the game in order to gain all sorts of different upgrades and new abilities, like increasing your resource collection multipliers or even unlocking brand new units. The game's set up by players putting 3 of their worker units, according to their faction, on the shared board made up of a bunch of different hex tiles. And the game offers a whole bunch of different objective cards, and you're only going to be playing each game with one of these, and that card's going to dictate how you gain victory points and how many you need to win the game. But players are going to be taking turns moving characters based on their speed and stopping if they encounter any enemies or mountains, and then players are going to be gathering resources based on the tiles they have their worker units on. And a neat aspect of this game is the way that the combat works, because after you've performed your movement and gathered any resources, you're then going to be triggering combat if you're on any locations that also have an opposing unit. Your units can have all sorts of different stats, but you're going to be taking the associated units for each of the players and then adding them onto your combat boards, which you'll then be pushing together. At the start of every combat, you're also going to be drawing a biome card, which will modify each battle in a variety of different ways, and players will alternate fighting until either one player is defeated or one player retreats, and combat in this game is done through dice rolling combined with your unique stats and tactic cards. All your units do heal at the end of combat, but you do have to spend resources based on your wounds taken. But after all the battles have been resolved, then you're going to be moving into the final phase of the round, which is the buying phase, where you can spend your resources in order to unlock different unit types, build new buildings, and also draw 3 multi-use upgrade cards, which are going to have different costs and effects depending on how you want to use them, and you can use as many or little of those cards as you like. The game continues like this over a series of rounds until a player is able to complete whatever the objective card dictated to win the game, and then that player is the winner. And if you do want to learn more about this one, I will have it linked in the description down below, and of course you can follow along to get notified once it launches. And also on the 29th, we have AVghost Paranormal Investigation, where players are going to be playing as different paranormal investigators, each with their own flashlights and different filters to change the color of the lights, because the way that this game works is that each of the ghosts will be susceptible to different spectrums of light, and you're going to want to take advantage of this if you want to deal damage to them. This one is also a game that I thought was launching a few months ago, so I did already offer footage for this one, so rather than going over this one all again, I'll just go ahead and roll that previous footage for you now. And this one is a very unique cooperative game because this one is actually designed to be played completely in the dark. Players are going to be playing as unique investigators with unique items and abilities that get unlocked based on the health that your character currently has. But the game also offers a bunch of different scenarios that are going to be all presented through a case file, which are going to feature different win and loss conditions, as well as special components like maps, photos, and reports. And players are going to be trying to find different clues within these reports and then associate them with clues that they find out on the board. In order to facilitate all this, the game does offer an app that you're going to be using to keep track of your branching storyline, and it's also going to present a number of clues to each of the players that they're going to have to try and investigate. The way this game manages to still function in the dark is that each of your character miniatures are also going to be accompanied with a base that features a little flashlight, and what's neat about this is that there are a bunch of different filters that you can swap in and out of your flashlight that are useful in different situations. The main enemies you're going to be running into are a bunch of different types of ghosts, and each of the ghosts are going to be weak to a certain spectrum of light, so you're going to need to use actions to put that spectrum into your flashlight and then use an action to attack that ghost. The issue here is that when you do attack a ghost, your filter is also destroyed in that attack, so you're going to have to put it back to the central supply, and then you're going to have to use actions or find some way to get that filter back into your supply later, hopefully taking advantage of the help of your fellow players in order to kill any other ghosts that might need that filter in the meantime. The main board is going to be set up with a bunch of different tiles depending on the scenario, but another really interesting detail with the components here is that you also have a bunch of these clear sheets, and they're going to have different icons and points of interest on them, and depending on the scenario, you're going to be laying one of those clear sheets over each of the tiles. This provides variability with the different boards, even if they're used across different scenarios, but these are going to provide the different points of interest that players are going to have to interact with to discover their clues. The cool thing here is that a lot of these points of interest are color-coded, and the only way that a player can actually use an action to interact with it is if they have the appropriate spectrum of light in order to see it. But the game continues like this until the players either complete their win condition or a loss condition is reached, either defined in the scenario or if they are defeated by those ghosts. If you're interested, check out more. I will have this one linked in the description down below. And also launching on April 29th, we have a new edition of the game Yinzi, and this one is called Yinzi Ming. This one's going to feature revamped artwork and a completely revised rulebook. And this game has a really interesting mechanism with the way that the players are going to be taking their actions, but before I get into that, I just want to show you the main board, and this is a shared board that features a bunch of different locations where you can place different resource production tiles as well as your various factories, because in this game, players are going to be trying to produce from those resource tiles, move them around on the different paths between the different locations in order to get them where you need them, and then process them with your factories to convert those into some refined goods. You can then use those goods to complete different objective tiles or load onto ships to send them to other regions in order to gain victory points or other bonuses. But the way that players are going to be taking their actions in this game is through the use of these action cards. Sort of, because there are two steps to the actions that you can take, because if you haven't taken any actions yet, you have to use an action card, and the way that this works is you're going to have a bunch of these different cards that feature a number of action points on the top and then a number of workers on the bottom. You're going to be choosing one of those and then assigning it to one of the 5 action locations on your own personal player board. When you do that, you get to take that action multiplied by the number of lines on that card. So for example, if you were to play this card, you get to multiply that action by 3. Because this also features one worker, you also get to put that worker onto that location, but that doesn't really do anything in the current turn. Instead, on your next turn, you can either use an action card again and assign it to one of the locations to take a different action, or because you now have a worker on this board from your previous turn, instead of using a card to take your action, you can instead take the workers from one location on your board and then put them out onto the main board to take an action out on the main board. And this is really cool because you're going to be juggling your action cards with your workers depending on which actions you want to take and in which order. And of course, with the different action cards granting you with a different amount of workers and a different amount of multipliers for your actions, there is a lot to consider when you're deciding which actions to perform on your turn. The different actions on your player board can allow you to claim different resource tiles out on the main board, sell resources that you've claimed for an income, transport goods from one location to another, or upgrade the distance that you can transport your goods, or even upgrade your factories to make them more efficient. Placing your workers out will allow you to do other actions like activating your factories to convert goods into those more valuable products, claim bonus locations that you can then activate later for that bonus, load ships with goods, or claim and complete different objective tiles, which is the main way to gain victory points in this game. The game plays over 4 rounds, and then at the end of the 4 rounds, it's the player with the most victory points that wins the game. And if this sounds interesting to you, you can check it out. I will have it linked down below. And this next one is also launching on the 29th, and it's called Eden the New World, and this one is a co-op miniatures survival strategy skirmish game that's set in a post-apocalyptic world. And this is also a genre I don't cover in very much detail, so I'm just going to give you the broad strokes here. But players will be playing as different factions, and the game does offer physical pledges where you can buy the physical miniatures, or instead you can get the STL files and print them off yourself. There's also all sorts of miniatures for different objects and terrain elements, and the game does also offer a companion app that I believe is optional, but it's going to help you track your sessions, and it does simplify certain aspects of the gameplay if you do choose to use it. Like I said, this one is a survival strategy game, so although it is a skirmish game, I imagine there will be some survival elements there as well. If you want to learn more, check it out. I will have it linked down below. And launching on April 30th, we have Goat Simulator, the card game, which is, of course, based on the video game with the same name. but this is a party card game where players are going to be combining different goat cards in order to equip your goat with different bonuses and effects that you'll then be using to attack the other players. The game also features different chaos cards that you can use to augment your attacks, defend yourself, or perform many other abilities. But that is all the info I have for this game. There isn't a whole lot released on this just yet, but if this is something you're interested in, feel free to check it out, and I will have it linked down below. And the game does also feature a throwable goat plushie. And launching on April 30th, we have Trash Rush, and this one's a competitive game where each player is going to be driving their own garbage truck around a bunch of different regions in a city, and players will be collecting different colored garbage and then recycling it in a variety of ways. You can either deliver it to one of the 2 recycling plants, which will gain you victory points and money, and one of the recycling plants will want you to contribute 2 trash bags of a different color, and the other is going to want 2 trash bags of the same color. The spaces on the left are more valuable, which means that you do want to get here before the other players, because whenever you deliver the trash, it does occupy that space. But rather than recycling the trash at the different plants, you can instead reuse it in order to repair all the different objects that are scattered across the board. At the start of the game, there's going to be a bunch of these crest-shaped tokens scattered across the board, and each of them is going to be some sort of object that needs repairing. This one, for example, needs you to perform a repair action with a red trash bag in order to flip this over and gain those 2 victory points, but each of these could grant different bonuses depending on which one you decide to repair. Once this token is flipped, it can't be repaired again, and there are a limited amount of each of these, which means these are another thing that you want to get to before the other players. All the players' garbage trucks do start on the left-hand side of the board in this parking lot here, and then players will be using their actions to move around on the board, pick up the different colored trash, and then deliver it to those different locations for their respective bonuses. One thing to note about movement in this game is that each of the regions are going to be divided up with these different arrows between them, and these can indicate one-way, two-way, or restricted roads, which are indicated with this orange icon around them. And anytime you either go the wrong way down a road, or if you use a road that you are currently restricted from, that is going to gain you a fine token. Getting a couple of these isn't the worst because you can hold up to 2 of them, and then at the end of the round you can just pay them off by using money. But each of these are also double-sided, and if you ever get another fine token while you still have 2 that you haven't paid for yet, then you're going to have to flip those 2 over, revealing probably a worse consequence, and then you're going to have to resolve those consequences. These could cause you to lose money or victory points or even upgrades that you've already installed on your garbage truck. And something I really like about this game is that it's really easy to teach and play, and even though you only have a few actions to choose from, you can actually do quite a bit on your turn. And unlike a lot of other pick up and deliver games where there can be quite a distance between where you're picking up or creating those resources and then delivering them, in this one you could be picking up the resources you need and delivering them all in the same turn. The main actions players can perform is to move, pick up trash, or repair an item with that trash, and this is all going to be done through the different action cards, and each player is going to be starting with the exact same 3 at the beginning of the game. What's neat about how all of this works is that every round, players are just going to have 3 turns each, and the first turn you're just going to be playing one of the cards from your hand, but then on your second turn you get to use that card over again, adding another card either ahead or behind that card, and this is where the action queue comes into play, because every turn within a round you're always adding one more card to the front or the back of the queue. This means that for your third turn, you also get to use the 2 cards you've already put into play, which makes that turn very powerful. And you're going to be adding your last card either in front or behind those 2 cards you've already played. You just can't place a card between cards. Each of the cards can also have up to 3 different actions to choose from. Your starting ones will just have 2. The truck allows you to move a space, while the trash bag allows you to pick a trash bag up. And of course, this wrench here allows you to repair one of the tokens in a region that you are currently occupying out on the board. As I mentioned, there are other cards that you can add into your hand, and they can either allow you to perform all 3 of the different actions, or perform just 2 of them, but with one of them being a lot more powerful. Players will be storing any trash that they collect on their own personal player boards, and at the beginning of the game you can only hold 1 of each color of trash. One exception here is that each player does also have some additional storage where they can store up to 4 additional trash bags of any color, and this is located on the bottom of your board. The only catch with this is that anytime you use it, you do have to gain a find token. The 3 slots in the middle of the board is where players are going to be storing any of the upgrades that they're able to acquire, and every time that you cover up one of those spaces, it also gains you 2 victory points, which is a really nice bonus. But the different upgrades can allow you to do different things like gain access to those restricted roads, unlock 2 of your locked storage tokens at once, increase the amount of money you gain when you do visit a recycling plant, or allow you to substitute money for any of the requirements when it comes to repairing the different items out on the board. And finally, there is also an upgrade that allows you to get a second garbage truck. You might have also noticed these different icons in the bottom left of your player board here, and what this is saying is every time you repair one of those different objects out on the main board, you'll then get to choose between gaining one of the upgrade tiles, gaining a new card to add into your hand, or instead just gaining 1 victory point. And now that you know the basic rules of the game, I do want to walk you through a few rounds and show you how it actually plays, because the publisher was kind enough to send me a prototype copy. And I do have this set up for 2 players, which means that we're going to have 2 trash bags on each of the different locations, just randomly distributed. And we have the 2 player boards in the bottom here with the green player and the orange player and their 3 associated cards. Like I mentioned, everyone starts with the same 3 cards, and we also each start with 1 garbage truck, which you can see on the starting location on the left here. And each of us do have our victory point trackers starting on the 5 space here on the victory point track. And the reason for that is because, like I said, you can lose victory points if you get unlucky with those finds. But I think we can just jump into the game here, and I'll start with this player on the left here first. And I think what we're going to do first is play this card, which allows us to move and then pick up 1 trash bag. So we're going to move our green truck down here and then pick up a yellow trash bag. And that's it for the first turn, but now it is the other player's turn. They're going to do something slightly different than me. Instead of moving and then picking up, they're going to pick up and then move. So that means they get to pick up 1 trash from the space they are already located at. Then they're going to move this way before I'm able to cut them off. But now we go back to my turn, and I get to play another card either to the left or the right of my pre-existing card. And then I can perform all the actions in order. You have to perform them in order, but you are allowed to skip actions. And the current objective I'm going for is to try and pick up 2 yellow tokens and then reach this location here so that I can repair it. And that will allow me to unlock 1 of my storage areas. And I think I can actually do all of that already in this single turn, because if I played this card like that, now I can perform a movement action and then a pick up trash action, which I will have to put in my extra storage, which does gain me a fine. But then the next card gains me another movement action, which moves me up here. One thing to note is I am moving through a restricted area, which does gain me another fine token. So I'm kind of playing dirty here, but now we have the screwdriver action, which allows us to repair 1 of the objects in the space we're currently located if we do meet the requirements. And this one wants 2 yellows, which we do have, so we'll be able to flip that over, and then it gains us with the ability to remove 1 of these locked tokens off of our board. We do have to discard the trash because that gets spent. And I think I'm going to open up my red trash storage so we can now hold 3 of those. And because I just repaired an object, that means I get to either choose an upgrade token, a new card to add to my hand, or a victory point. And I think I'm going to gain the upgrade token that allows me to unlock 2 more of my storage spaces at once here. So we put that in like so, and that's going to gain us 2 victory points just for making that upgrade. And I'm going to unlock the yellow and the green. The other player's going to use their card to move and then pick up, and then pick up and move. And another way to say that is that they're going to move and then pick up 2, and they can pick up both of these because they do have space for it. And then, like I said, actions are always optional, and I think they're actually going to stay here because now that they have a red, yellow, and green, there is an object they can fix here with the green that will also allow them to unlock 1 of their storage locations. But what they did there was a really good move because they actually cleared this whole area of trash bags, and they know that I already have 2 fines, which means that I don't want to go this way because that's going to give me another fine. I can't go this way or that way because those will also give me fines, which means that this is the only way that I can move if I don't want to have to reveal what these fines are and face the consequences. So I think the only option I have here to do anything meaningful is to play my last card on the left here, which is going to allow me to pick up, move twice, pick up, move, and repair. So if we do that, I can pick up and then move twice, pick up again, and we'll take this yellow, And then I can move and repair, but like I said, actions are optional. You just have to do them in order. So we're going to skip that move and go straight into the repair because we do have a yellow now, which means that we can complete this. This allows us to unlock the last storage location on our board, so that means we can get rid of this token. And for our extra bonus for fixing that, I think I will take one of these bonus tiles, and this one does allow us to move through the restricted zones. So I'll throw that on our board here, and that also gains me 2 victory points. Hopefully our finds work out because that was my last turn and I wasn't able to gain any money in that turn, and each find does cost 2 coins, and each player only starts with 2 coins at the beginning of the game, which means that I'll only be able to pay off one of these. But we're not going to resolve that yet, so let's see what the other player is going to do. And like I said, we do want to repair this, so I think that's going to be the first action we do. So we'll throw this card in the front, and we're going to skip that first move action and go straight into the repair, so that's going to cost us a green. We can discard that, which allows us to flip this over. And it looks like there's lots of red tokens around us right now, so I'm going to get rid of the capacity lock on our red tokens. And also because they fixed that object, they also get that additional bonus of either a bonus tile, a card, or a victory point, and I think they're going to take a card. And we're going to take this one over here that allows us to do one of each of the actions. Even though we have 4 cards now, you still only get to play 3 of them each round, but because this one is so powerful, you can almost guarantee that we will be using it. But now we can move and then we can pick up 2. Unfortunately for us, there's only 1 at this location, but we did clear the space on our red, which allows us to store that without getting a fine. And for our last movement, we'll move over here to the right because it's pretty much our only option, and also it's not a bad one. But if we move backwards, that's not really putting us in a great position, and it will also get us a fine. Moving down here would also get us a fine. And I should have pointed these out earlier because at the start of the game, there are certain locations that are going to have these different blockades set up, and that completely blocks off the area until you reach the 3rd round. And after the 2nd round, but before the 3rd, those do all get removed. But we did just finish the 1st round here, so this can move over to the 2nd round. Players now each have the opportunity to pay off any of their fines, but it's only this player that was playing dubiously. And the way that this works when you don't have enough money to pay off your fines is that you can pay off the ones that you can. So I have 2 coins and that's what it costs to pay off a fine, so we'll get rid of that one. And because we don't have the money to pay for this one, we do have to reveal it. We don't have a choice here. And that's not great because this is going to force us to get rid of one of our upgrade tokens. So I guess I'll get rid of this top one now that we've unlocked 2 already by fixing things. So that's going to go back, and then I have to pick 2 of these locations to place these tokens back onto. And that's why you want to be paying off your fines or just not getting them at all. And now we just take our cards back into our hand, and then the first player marker is going to be passed to the next player, and then they're going to be starting the next round. And I think they're just going to play this card down here to move 1 and then pick up trash because they do have space for a green here. The other player is going to use the same card, but what's nice about their current location is that they are able to move through these restricted zones now because they do have that upgrade still, so they're going to be moving through here and then picking up this blue token. And I think they're going to use their powerful card here to move, pick up, and repair all in a single card. And they're going to be moving back up here, picking up a red token, and they do have space for it. And then because they have a green, they are able to repair this, which gains them 2 coins. So let's repair that for a green, get rid of this, gain 2 more coins. And for their bonus, they're going to gain this upgrade tile, which gains them an additional 3 coins anytime that they visit one of the recycling plants. Because they also filled in one of those spaces there, that does gain them 2 victory points. And also because this player lost one of their upgrades, they should have lost 2 victory points earlier. But that is not the end of their turn yet because that was only 1 card. They can still move and pick up, and they are going to do that, so they'll move up here and pick up this green in order to replace the one that they just spent. And now it's the other player's turn, and they're going to play this card in order to move, pick up, and then pick up and move. We are going to move the wrong way through a one-way street, which does also gain us another fine. But then we can pick up 2, and we do have space for both of these, which is nice. And then for our final movement, we're going to be moving through this restricted area, which we do have access to, in order to visit the recycling plant. This is the one that wants us to contribute 2 trash bags of different colors in order to claim a column, but what's important to note about visiting the recycling plants is that you can actually do this twice each time you visit them. Because we have 2 blues and a red and a green, we can actually pair a blue with each of the other colors in order to claim the first column, and also the second column all in a single turn here. So that is really efficient and nice. And that's going to gain us 5 victory points as well as 5 coins. Looks like we might actually be able to pay off our fines this time around. One thing to note about visiting the recycling plants is that even if you do have more actions left, your turn always comes to an end immediately after you resolve your effects here. But you still get to do one more thing, and you do have to do this, and that's to move your truck out of the recycling plant to one of the 3 orange locations. And I think we're going to be moving up here just because there's lots for us to do in this area. That's the end of our turn, and we can go back to the other player here, and I think they're going to try and do a similar action and visit this recycling plant. And we are going to gain a fine here, but I think this is the best course of action, so I'm just going to play any card because it doesn't matter what we play at the end here because we're not going to be able to play those actions anyway. But we're going to move, pick up, repair, and move. Except we're going to skip that first move and we're just going to pick up and repair because we do have 2 yellows after picking that up, but we didn't have capacity for that second yellow, so we do need to gain a fine for that. That's okay because repairing this does gain us 4 coins, which will help us pay off that fine. And for our bonus here, I'm going to take this token, which gains us an extra truck. And I have that down here, and that's just going to be put on the starting location. This allows us to now split our actions between the 2 trucks, but all the actions on a single card do have to be performed by a single truck. But that's not going to matter too much just yet because with our final move action, we're going to be moving up here and then contributing 2 of the trash bags of different colors. And unfortunately, we can only do that once here because we just have the green and the red. But that will gain us 4 victory points plus 3 coins, but plus another 3 coins because we have this upgrade that we took earlier. So that's going to get us 6 coins and the 4 victory points, plus an additional 2 because we just gained that upgrade. The other player is going to put this card on the end here, so they'll be able to move, pick up, move, and then repair. So we'll just move down here, pick up twice, and then move, and repair. But they're just going to skip that movement and repair the one that's right here because that's just 1 blue, which they just picked up. And for their bonus, they're going to be picking up this card here, which allows them to move 3 spaces and then do a repair. And it was also a strategic move to stay in this location because we are now going to be moving into the 3rd round, which means that all of these different blockade tokens are going to be removed, and they are in a good position to start taking advantage of all those tokens that haven't been able to be claimed yet. Each of the players do have enough money to pay off both of their fines, but then we're going to be continuing into the 3rd round, and then after the 3rd round, we're going to be moving into the 4th one, and whenever you get to the 4th round, this icon means that you're also going to be clearing out all of the recycling plants, making those spaces available once again. At that point, players will be trading in any coins they have remaining, and you gain 1 victory point for every 3 coins. But one thing that is important to note is that there is this 1 repair location in the middle of the board that is printed on, and this one can be continually used to exchange 3 coins into 2 victory points. So once this area does unlock, if you have some extra money, that is a really nice place to visit. Some of the extra cards you can gain also come with a victory point value as well, and if you have any of those, you'll be adding those victory points. And then of course, it's the player with the most victory points that wins the game. A really solid game here that's quick to play and has a really fun theme as well. And if this one does look interesting to you, be sure to check it out, and I will have a link to the campaign in the description down below. And launching on May 1st, we have Warfront, and this one is a 2D fantasy war game. And what that means is that this is a war game that's only played with cards. There's going to be a bunch of different factions that players can play as, but like I said, each of these are going to be represented with their own deck of cards. You're going to be using different cards to represent the different units that you can put into play. To start the game, each player is going to be taking turns placing one of their units out on the table face down, and then all the units are going to be revealed. Players will then take turns moving one of their units a number of inches using a measuring stick, or performing a ranged attack if that unit is able and if there is another unit within range. What's neat about how the cards come into play with this game is that any touching cards of opposing factions will then be involved in battle. Players will have different advantages or disadvantages depending on the orientation of the cards and if it's the long or short side touching the other card in a particular way, but each of the units will have their own attack and defense defense values, and players will be rolling dice to resolve their attacks. And all units do only have 3 health, so anytime that a unit takes 3 damage, they will be eliminated from the game. Another cool aspect of this game is that 6 is a special value, and anytime you're rolling a die, it doesn't matter if you're defending or attacking. Anytime you roll a 6, you will gain a glory point, and these can be collected and spent for special actions at any point in the game. And the game does play over 4 rounds, and whichever player has the most units remaining at that time is the winner. And if you do want to check this one out, I will have it linked down below. Also on May 1st, we have A Cure to Die For, and this one is a role-playing murder mystery where a murder has taken place at a luxury spa. Players are representing the guests and staff at the spa, but of course there is always one player who was in fact the murderer. It's up to the other players to try and discover who that might be, while that player tries to conceal their identity. This is a game that plays over 3 rounds, and every round there's going to be a different event that gets introduced, and that's going to be bringing in different observations and clues to each of the players individually. And players will be trying to work together using this information to figure out what led up to the murder and who was the actual culprit. But of course, one of you can't be trusted and nobody knows exactly who that might be, and it is only the murderer who is allowed to lie. If this one sounds interesting to you, I will have it linked down below. Also launching on May 1st, we have OQUO, and this one is a 2-player abstract strategy game. We're going to be setting up the main board with 25 different tokens in a 5x5 grid. Each player also has 4 tokens of their own color, and these are kind of shaped like an upside down cup so that they can sit on top of those 25 tokens that are already laid out. But at the beginning of the game, each player is going to have 2 in each of the opposing corners. And this is a really easy game to teach and play because the only thing you can do in this game is move. You can't jump over things, you can't capture or anything like that. You're just going to be taking turns moving one of your tokens 1 space in any direction. And yes, you can move diagonally. The way you win this game is by being the first player to create a perfect square with your 4 tokens representing the 4 corners of that square. This means that each of those tokens need to be equally spaced apart. And of course, since both you and your opponent are doing this, and the only thing you can do in this game is move, you're going to be trying to strategically move your tokens so that they get in the way of your opponent's strategy and the locations that they're trying to get to, while simultaneously putting your own tokens in a place that they can form a square. Very minimalistic, but I bet there will still be quite a bit of depth, and if you do want to check this one out, I will have it linked down below. And also launching on May 1st, we have another one that I am very interested in, and this one is called Lifeboats, Planks of Carneades. And this one is a pretty simple game to play because in this game, players are just trying to get to the other side of the board because players are all crew aboard a ship, but that ship has sunk and players are fighting for the unreliable lifeboats in order to try and make it back to land. The game plays over a series of rounds that has a few different phases, but every phase does have the players voting for what is going to happen next. The first thing players are going to be voting on is which boat is going to spring a leak. Whichever boat that is, you're going to be putting a leak token onto one of the open spots in that boat. But if there isn't an open spot on that boat, then players are actually going to be voting again, this time voting for which player's meeple is the one to get thrown overboard, but in this case it's only the people on that boat that do get to vote. As this continues to happen, if the number of leaks on a boat ever exceeds the number of meeples on that boat, then that boat is actually going to sink anyway, sending all those meeples to sea. But next, players will be voting on which boat is going to move 1 space forward. Once that's resolved and the ship is moved, you then move into the final phase of the round, where players are each going to be taking turns removing one of their own crew members from any of the ships out in play. And then in reverse turn order, the players are then going to be putting their own meeple that they just took off onto one of the other ships. The game continues like this until all the ships have either met the end of the board or just met their end. Players will then tally up their victory points based on the number of meeples that they got to the various islands. And then it's the player with the most victory points that wins the game, and if this one looks interesting to you, you can find it down below and be sure to follow along to get notified once this one launches. And that is everything I got for you this week, but don't leave yet because we still got a few awesome giveaways, and these are the easiest giveaways to enter ever. All you got to do is leave a comment down below. You don't have to like or subscribe or anything like that, although I do appreciate it, and we do have these giveaways every single week. And I do also offer these videos every single week, so if the actual content is of interest to you, it's also a good idea. And our first giveaway here is a really nice one because this one is for an all-in pledge for Trickerion, and this is the 10th anniversary edition, which is going to be including everything previously released for the game as well as a new expansion. And if you're not already familiar with this game, this is a very popular worker placement game where players are going to be playing as various magicians, building up their own crew in order to put on various shows. Players will be assigning their workers to different locations using location cards, and then using those locations to perform different actions like learning new tricks, gathering equipment in order to perform those tricks, hire a new crew, or place those new learned tricks into different performances, or reserve a spot for your performance, and of course perform the show itself. What's really neat about this new edition is that it's actually introducing a new expansion that introduces the arcane arts into the game. So everything in this game so far did have to do with your classic magic tricks and illusions, whereas this new expansion is actually going to be introducing real magic into the mix. This is introduced through a mysterious wanderer who's going to be bringing new actions that players can perform at the various locations, and players can acquire different arcane resources and items in order to help them perform their tricks or perform more actions. And there are also new mystical workers that you can hire to your crew that are also included in this new expansion. As I mentioned, this game is for the Anniversary Edition pledge, which is going to get you everything offered for this game so far. And to enter this giveaway, all you got to do is leave a comment down below with the hashtag magic, and you can say anything that you want, but if you're looking for something in particular, maybe you could show off your best magical words or spells. And I do want to thank Mindclash Games for this one because they do always donate really epic giveaways to this channel, and I really do appreciate it. And I'm pretty sure every single one of them has also been offered worldwide, so no matter where you are, you can feel free to enter in on this one. The next giveaway we have is for a pledge for Solar Titans, and this one's a really interesting game because players are going to be using different cards in order to build up the defenses and the attack systems on their own ship that they construct with the cards themselves. This allows for all sorts of different shapes and configurations, but players will also have crew cards as well that they can use for things such as arming their weapons or buying new ship parts, and there is a wide variety of parts that you can purchase in order to continue to upgrade your ship. Players will then be fighting their ships against each other, trying to be the first to destroy their opponent's command deck. There's all sorts of weapons they can take advantage of and fire in different ways. And this is another one that is also offered worldwide, so I do want to thank the publisher for that. And this is also for the Definitive Edition pledge, which comes with the full game as well as the new content and upgraded components and improved storage. To enter this one, you're just going to do the exact same thing. All you got to do is leave a comment down below. For this one, you can put the hashtag solar on it, and you can say anything that you want, but if you're looking for something in particular, maybe you could let us know what you would name your ship. Good luck in the giveaways, but now let's go ahead and draw the winner from last week's giveaway. And we did only have one giveaway for last week, but this was a really big one because this one was for an all-in pledge for the game Fairytale, which is doing absolutely crazy on Gamefound right now. But to draw a winner, I'm going to do the usual thing here and use this application here. All these extra names down here are bonus entries for my members over on Ko-fi who make all of this possible. I really do appreciate all the support there, and if there's anyone watching this video that wants to help make the efforts and work that I put into these videos each and every week a little bit more sustainable, I do have a link to that in the description down below that you can go ahead and check out if you are interested. Let's draw those comments and draw the winner, and the winner of Fairytale is Magnus Jacobson, who is from Ko-fi, so I'll reach out to you and let you know that you won yourself a really sweet pledge here. But I have also been absolutely swamped lately, so if you see this before I'm able to reach out to you, feel free to email me at adam@shelfclair.com and we'll get it all sorted out. And that is finally everything I have for you this week. Quite a lot of games to cover, and it looks like next week's going to be another big one because I'm looking at the list here and I already have 12 games tracked, and I'm sure I'll find more, so it looks like that's going to be another big video. But I do have some board game plans tomorrow, and it is always nice to play the games once in a while instead of just covering them, so I am looking forward to that. I hope you find some time to get in a few yourself, but as always, thanks so much for tuning in, and until next time, keep that shelf cluttered and the table full.